And we're back. I'm Paul Fabrizio.
And I'm Don Frazier. I'm professor of history at McMurray University. My colleague is a political scientist here.
Yes.
And we are going through the Constitution line by line.
In a collaborative manner.
I weigh in where I can. Why are we doing this?
We're bored?
I don't think that's it in my case. I don't know. I think we're doing the Lord's work here, so I think this is probably important.
Yeah. We've made the comment before on earlier tapes that most Americans haven't read the Constitution. And reading it, I hate to say it, nothing against the framers, it's not the most exciting thing. But various people over time have gone through it line by line to look at it, to analyze it. And our effort here is to do it in a way that hopefully makes sense to the viewers and
is
the listeners.
Engaging.
Yeah, and is engaging too.
Can you imagine those guys writing that stuff down in a committee in an unair-conditioned Philadelphia room?
While they were suffering from dysentery.
Yikes.
Yeah.
That's tough duty.
That was our framers. They had a tough job. Okay, we ready?
Ready. What's our line?
Article 1, Section 6, Clause 2, no senator nor representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any other civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time. And no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office.
Emoluments.
Emoluments. Did I say it wrong?
No. That's just,
emoluments.
That's the first time I've heard that outside of some conversations about the current president.
Right, and when we get to Article 2, we'll talk about the president and emoluments.
Yeah.
This here is really about the separation of powers. In other words, if you're a member of Congress, you cannot be part of the legislative branch. I mean, you cannot be part of the executive branch.
Yeah, you can't be Secretary of Treasury and representative from Wisconsin.
Exactly. And if you're the Secretary of State, you cannot be elected to the House of Representatives without quitting your job.
Yeah, you got to pick one or the other. You can't have a foot in each camp.
And, this really isn't a big deal because everybody seems to observe it.
But it hasn't been historically.
Okay,
I mean, there's been people that have, been the high priest, also the consul, also, every sort of office they can hold all rolled into one.
Sort of double dipping and
triple dipping, quadruple dipping, absolutely. And that is not uncommon elsewhere on the planet.
Right. But it is uncommon here. And you just think, for example, just to use the Trump administration, for example, the current chief of staff was a member of Congress. And when he was appointed to be part of the White House staff, he quit his job and he left one branch to move to another. And it's a change. Your paycheck is different. Where you park is different.
Yeah, absolutely.
You lose an office in one building to get an office in another building.
You lose this ID card for that ID card.
Exactly.
Sure.
You go through different security clearances, that sort of stuff. So they really tried to create, and I think it's really smart, they really tried to create the idea that if you're in this branch, you're not in that branch, and you have to be loyal to the branch you're in.
Wow. So it's like three mini governments.
There you go.
The three that make one.
And that is
very
a great
Trinitarian.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, thank you.
And that I think is a really good way to look at it, is three mini governments. So if you are appointed to a federal judgeship, you lose your seat in Congress. You can't hold it anymore.
Yeah, you just can't do it.
Now, I go through all that. We talk about this, but what about the military?
That's a tough one.
Okay? Can you be a member of Congress and still hold an office or commission?
That would be tough. I would say no. In my opinion, I would say no. But what's the Constitution, say about that?
Well, it really doesn't, except what I just read.
Yeah.
And it's been interpreted in terms of the military pretty loosely.
Sure.
So that there's members of Congress today who are officers in the reserves.
Yeah, I was about to say, what do you
example.
do with the militia?
Right.
And the reserves and the National Guard and things like that.
And there's people who are officers in that. During wartime, occasionally members would keep their job and then go and join the military.
Get
and
called
go
up.
fight. Yeah. In fact, there was a member of Congress who just got called up, and he's off in Afghanistan.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah. And
So what's that do for his district?
No representation. His staff continues.
Sure.
And his staff will continue. They just won't be able to vote. So, Lyndon Johnson, World War II. He joined the military, joined the Navy, I believe, and then went off to the South Pacific and actually got a Silver Star while he was a member of Congress.
Wow.
And there were others who did the same thing. And the president, Franklin Roosevelt, finally decided, this is ridiculous. You guys are elected to be members of Congress, not to fight. We have other people willing to fight. I need people who can legislate.
Sure.
And so he called them all back. And so that's where they ended up spending the war, was back in Washington, D.C.
Well, somebody had to be in charge.
Yeah, but it was one of those things where, really, where does the military fit in this? And that never has really been well answered. It seems like it's okay they serve, but then they have to come back and serve in Washington, D.C.
So is there a potential that you could pull off a military coup of sorts by coordinating nothing but military members running for Congress in every district in the country?
Active duty military are prohibited from engaging in active politics in their uniform.
So they could just be
They can't run for office.
a reserve officer military coup is the best we could get.
Right. The best we could get would be reserve officers.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Has there ever been anybody that has served in all three branches in the course of their career, lifetime? I know Taft was Supreme Court and he was also president. And I know John Tyler was president, but then he was a Confederate congressman.
Yeah.
And then John Quincy Adams was president.
And
he was
went back to the House of Representatives. He's
Right.
the only one who went back to the House.
But I don't know if anybody's done the trifecta.
I can't think of anybody who's done it either. I don't recall what Taft was before. Was he ever in the legislative branch?
Was he ever a congressman from wherever he was from? Ohio?
Yeah, I think Ohio.
Wasn't he one of the big guys from Ohio
Yeah.
in the era of the fat presidents?
Yeah.
Just at the edge of it?
Yeah.
Because he was an administrator out in the Philippines. For a while.
And then I guess he came back to Washington, D.C.
Oh.
Oh, look at whoa-wee.
We have
Whoa.
a magic
List of people who have served in all three branches of the United States federal government, thanks to our crack research staff here.
Yes.
Christopher Bartlett, who was off camera.
Yeah,
And the first thing they have is John Marshall.
Ah,
John Marshall served in Congress, Secretary of State, and then he was Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Okay?
and that's it.
Yeah, and that's it. Oh, wait. Okay, 45 men can claim to have served in all three federal government branches. By the way, this is according to Wikipedia.
Well, Wikipedia knows all, sees all.
Oh, look at this. The most recent person to join the list was James L. Buckley, who had been president of Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty. So that's the executive branch appointment.
Branch, sure.
And then a U.S. senator when he was appointed to the court, District of Columbia Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay, so at the lower level, sure, but not at the pinnacle level.
Not at the pinnacle levels.
I bet John Marshall's the only one that did it at all three.
Yeah. James L. Buckley.
Top of the heaps.
James Burns, Director of Economic Stabilization.
Yeah.
Salmon P. Chase, Secretary of the Treasury.
Yes.
Senator, and then Chief Justice
Oh, yeah,
of the United
that's
States
exactly
Supreme
right.
Court.
I should have remembered him.
Yeah.
Civil War guy.
Yeah. Then there's a bunch of people I've never heard of before. Malin Dickerson, Secretary of the Navy, 1834.
Ah.
Okay. Gabriel Duval. Oh, here's a good name. Powhatan Ellis.
Powhatan, I thought old Poe had done that.
Okay. So
Interesting, but none of them served in all three concurrently.
no.
Or even two of them concurrently.
No. Here's one of my favorites. Lucius Quintus Cincinnatus Lamar II.
Wow.
He was Secretary of the Interior, representative from Mississippi in Congress, and a senator from Mississippi, and then an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court.
Wow.
I just love the name.
That is
Lucius
a great name.
Quintus Cincinnatus.
When was that? 1890s?
He was Secretary of the Interior in the 1880s,
Okay.
member of Congress before the Civil War, and senator after the Civil War, and then the Supreme Court in the 1880s, 90s.
Okay.
So there you go. And John Marshall is probably the most famous of all of these. The rest of these, most of them just... George Mitchell. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Senator George Mitchell.
Yeah.
He was a U.S. attorney in Maine, then was a senator, and was a judge.
Okay, but
court
still
judge.
not at the pinnacle level.
Right,
Come
not
on.
at the pinnacle. So, all right, there we go.
See, it's good to have good research staff.
It is. Thank you, Wikipedia, and thank you, Christopher Bartlett.
You are welcome.
Okay, and now he wants his phone back.
Yeah, quit reading his text.
Okay, I'll read them. All right, anyway. Anything else to say about that?
No, that's an interesting. Let's go back to the emoluments.
Emoluments.
Yeah, what's that all about? What is an emolument?
Okay. Well, let me just read the phrase again. No senator or representative shall be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time. So what we're talking about is someone who's been appointed to a position where the money you can get from that position has increased over time. And you have to think tragically here, what kind of a position would that be where you could get that? I'm drawing a blank here.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one to kind of think about. Oh well.
And the book I'm using has an example.
Oh, please.
Congress can raise the salary of the Secretary of State, and it's Congress. Let's see. Is the reason behind the provision is to prevent a type of corruption whereby the legislature may promise a certain legislative action in return for the appointment of one of its members to a federal position.
Okay.
Congress may evade the literal meaning of this provision in order to make effective a legitimate appointment. In 1907, Congress raised the salary of the Secretary of State. In 1909, it reduced the salary to its original figure so that a member of the Senate at the time the increase was voted would be eligible for the office of Secretary of State.
Okay, so they can't vote to increase the salary of the Secretary of State, and then somebody who voted on increasing the salary goes and takes the position.
Right.
Okay, that
Right.
solves that.
And it actually has another example. 1992, some people might remember this. The senator from Texas, Lloyd Benson,
Yes,
he was appointed by Bill Clinton to be Secretary of the Treasury.
yes.
But he had voted to increase the salary for the Treasury.
Wah, wah,
So
wah,
they
wah.
voted to cut the salary of the Secretary of the Treasury so he could have the position.
I remember that he was kind of miffed about that. 'Cause old Lloyd Benson sometimes told you what he thought. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. One of
more
those things.
more arcana
Yes.
in our Constitution.
Exactly. Okay. Think we're done with that?
That's our line.
That's our line.
Is that the end of the?
That is the end of that section, too.
So
Yes.
we've knocked out section or Article 1, Section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yes, indeed. We have. And the big stuff, the good stuff, is still ahead.
Yeah, and the big gritty stuff is coming up because mostly we've been talking about housekeeping and mechanics.
That's right.
Now we're actually going to talk about what they do.
Shall I tell you the title of the next clause that we'll take up next time?
That'll be a nice teaser.
Revenue bills.
Dun, 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 dun.
What is Congress about? It's taking our money.
And the power of the purse strings.
There you go.
All right, well, thanks for going through all this with us, and we will start some more heavy lifting in the next episode. Thanks for watching.